In this episode, a drunken Santa at the Thanksgiving Day parade sets off a series of events that leads to the real Santa going on trial for the spirit of Christmas. In Miracle on 34th Street. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
How'd you like that, Nick?
I loved it. Good job.
I wrote that while Nick was in front of me. Welcome, everybody else, to the 3324 podcast. Normally, I have my opens written ahead of time, but this time I wasn't ready, and I just knocked it out. So, with Nick's approval. So, thank you for joining us each and every week, where we go over the greatest, what we think is of music and movies. Eric is not here today. He's a little bit under the weather. We did an episode last night, and he was very deep-throated. Very.
Oh my gosh!
Oh boy!
Oh man!
This
very
is a
deep-throated.
This is a Christmas,
you know what I mean?
Family episode that just went to shit.
And Nick, I'm surprised that Nick went there. Like Nick is normal, especially for someone called.
Nick was much more oral about it.
Especially for someone called.
Oh my God!
Right, Nick?
This is really going off the rails.
His voice was very, very froggy, but we made it through that episode successfully. We were doing 2 episodes in a row, and he's got a touch of the flu. So, Eric, we hope you feel better.
Hope you feel better.
We miss you.
Hope you feel better with the flu.
So those of you watching on YouTube will see our 2 guests. And, of course, the first one that started busting out laughing, Mr. St. Nicholas Leshi, creator of the City of Kick blog. So you can go check that out. People still do blogs, and Nick still keeps that alive, and he writes some interesting stuff. So
Please
welcome
do.
aboard, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll drop a link to the show notes so you can guys check that out. How you doing, Nick? How's things?
Doing good. Feeling festive. Have my Santa hat on.
Yeah.
Ready to talk about one of my favorite movies.
Wow. Good. Mine as well. Also with us, with some new lighting scheme, which works, is very good. We had to get the lighting adjusted, but now she's perfect. Perfectly centered, and she's there. Ms. Christy Cuomo, how are you? Welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me. I'm sans Santa hat. I was excluded from that email thread, but it's cool. I'm good.
For those of you into Sesame Street that are watching us on YouTube, you'll see these 2 belong and one doesn't, and which one doesn't. It'll be apparent. It'll be quite apparent. For those of you just listening, you'll have to figure it out. What
maybe they'll learn who's mean and excludes people.
Yeah, not me.
Even the Grinch wore a Christmas hat.
That's right.
I would.
And his heart was 3 sizes too small.
Had I known, I would have. But I have a paint stick. Apparently.
Do you have? Just generally, do you have a Christmas hat?
I do. It's in the Christmas box, and I have not yet brought down the Christmas decorations. For me, it's still a little early.
Alrighty.
Sorry. But yes, Christmas
fine.
hats and mistletoe and all the...
Nice.
Nick, what is your deadline for Christmas decorations?
Right after Thanksgiving. Anything before Thanksgiving is too soon. Anything after is fine. And then taking down, I think it's like January 3rd or whatever. The 12 days of Christmas after 25th. So that's how it goes.
Yeah, I think December for me is like you give Thanksgiving a little time to deflate and kind of wean off, and then December it's like on like Donkey Kong. Then you can
think a lot of
do
people
whatever you want. Yeah, do whatever you want at that point. So.
Yeah, because sometimes Thanksgiving's too early. Sometimes it's
yeah. So at least give it,
Well, yeah,
it's getting crowded.
If you put it up before Thanksgiving, you just rush. If I feel like you're rushing past Thanksgiving.
Some people are going right after Halloween, it seems, lately.
Yes, because that's Hallmark, and that's having worked. No, seriously, having worked in retail when I was a kid, we worked in a video store. I mean, it was video at the time. DVDs were just coming out. Christmas started in October, like the shipments. And it kind of ruins the spirit a little bit in retail because you just feel like you're always rushing through a holiday. So I wait, and I think that's part of the reason why. Like probably next week, I'll be okay with it.
Christy sets up. I think she sets up her decorations on the 14th of January.
I do it after Christmas, after Little Christmas. after Chinese New Year, and then I'm good to go.
She needs that extra time to decompress after the holidays to enjoy setting up the decorations on January 14th.
No, I do it on Boxer Day.
There we go. Sylvester Stallone's favorite holiday. So we're talking about Miracle on 34th Street. Let's dive into this. Let's talk about the stats as we do, and then we'll pull apart this holiday episode that we're bringing you. So this was released in June of 1947, oddly enough, a very odd month, but it has to do with talk a little bit about that, about the studio and why they wanted it released then. Screenplay by George Seaton, directed by George Seaton also. The budget on this film was $630,000, and it made $2.7 million box office. So that's not bad, especially for back then. They spent a pretty penny. That's a lot of money to be spending on a film, especially not a war epic film or something with big set pieces. So very interesting. Nominated for 4 Oscars. Believe that. And it won 3 out of the 4 Oscars it was nominated for. The only one it didn't win was nominated for Best Picture, but it lost a Gentleman's Agreement, which was a
20th Century Fox movie.
Yeah, so
Fox
I
have a suspicion that they wanted that one. Like it had Gregory Peck in it.
Yeah.
But this was the better film for sure.
I bet you more people have seen this film than Gentleman's Agreement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, probably.
And we watched it multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely. The 3 Oscars that it did win was Best Original Story, Best Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actor for Mr. Edmund Gwenn for his role.
I think should have been Best Actor.
Claus.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there are any leads in this film.
Yeah, it's almost supporting.
It's almost a movie of all supporting actors, and then character actors below that, which is very interesting. You know, like there's not one actor or actress, even though there are leads. You know, the leads are John Payne and
Maureen O'Hara.
Yeah, thank you, and Maureen O'Hara. But they're not in it throughout all the time. There are times when Maureen O'Hara's character is not seen for a while. Then there's times when John Payne isn't seen for a while. So it's
in billing, it is John Payne, Maureen O'Hara, and then it goes to
it is
Edmund.
You're right.
Gwenn, and then his is in actually bigger letters, and then it went to Natalie Wood, and everyone's a little bit smaller font.
Yeah, so let's roll through the cast, and this is also a very interesting film because you have the cast, and then you have a shit ton of people in this film that they're uncredited, like
a lot of great characters that aren't credited.
Yeah, they just didn't do a lot of credits on this film. They just kind of gave you like a bunch of people. Yeah, poor Alfred. So you've got Maureen O'Hara as Doris Walker, John Payne as Fred Gailey, Edmund Gwenn as Kris Kringle, Gene Lockhart, great character actor as the Judge Harper, Natalie Wood, very young Natalie Wood as Susan Walker. Porter Hall, these names might not be familiar, but when you see their faces, he's Dr. Sawyer. William Frawley, the great William Frawley, before he was doing I Love Lucy, he was doing a lot of bit roles. He was actually in an Abbott and Costello film also. He's as Charlie Halloran. He's kind of like the political fixer for the judge. The great, my favorite, Jerome Cowan as District Attorney Thomas Mara. This is the second episode that Jerome Cowan is appearing in. He was in our Maltese Falcon episode as well. So I just love Jerome Cowan. There's just something about the pencil thin mustache, and he's a really good actor. I like him. Something about him.
You wouldn't lie to me, Daddy.
Philip Tange. Philip Tange as Julian Shellhammer. Also, he works at Macy's. Now, there's a bunch of uncredited people. The guy that played R.H. Macy, Jack Albertson. You know, Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is literally in it for 2 minutes.
Great scene, though.
At the very end of the film, but he's got a pivotal role in the film. He's the mail clerk that finds the letter, like, oh, all these letters, and it's like, oh, this one's going to the courthouse. He's like, hey, what about all those dead letters back there? You know, it'd be nice to get rid of them, huh? I love I love all the New York and Brooklyn accents in this film too. Everybody's so like such a New Yorker. Even the secretary, you know, well, I think it's a great idea. You know, people, you know, when Shellhammer's getting all the complaints and the secretary comes in and they're all like, you know, and Alfred with the Brooklyn accent too, you know, throw it on the floor. I'm tired of just sweeping up dust anyway. You know, so it's such a great cast. And then I just want to point out one more character actor. Alvin Greenman plays Alfred, but Thelma Ritter, who was a big character actress, she was actually nominated for a couple Academy Awards multiple times. A very small role. She's the mother of the first kid that encounters Santa at Macy's when he wants the fire truck.
Just don't get it.
And Santa says, we don't, you can get him at Schoenfeld's, and the mother's like, I want to thank Santa also. It's a fine thing telling the kid he's gonna get that's Thelma Ritter. She's one of those people. Yeah, again, back in the 40s, all these actors were just working in different films. So such a great thing. Just before we start the conversation, like I said, this was released in June of 1947. 20th Century Fox really didn't want to promote this. They were like, why aren't you releasing? People were like, why aren't you releasing this during the holidays? And their response was, people go to the movies during the summer.
They were ahead of their time.
Yeah, so they weren't pegging this as a holiday film, and a lot of the marketing materials in the trailers did not position Saint Nick in this at all. It was more of like a romance film, and Natalie Wood, to kind of fool people, because they, but they didn't think people would go to it. But then on the other hand, they're like, people go to the movies in the summer, so we wanted to get the film out then. So it was very curious that it was this holiday film, but not.
And they played with a title for a while too. Like they didn't know what they wanted to call it.
Christmas out of it. It was Christmas Miracle on 34th Street.
Then they went with the big heart again. Trying to go with a romance a little bit, and
there was like 4 or 5 different titles.
But then Miracle on 34th Street. It's a very New York kind of feel good movie.
It's a great title.
Film.
It's a great.
It epitomizes. It's the perfect title for the film. It absolutely epitomizes.
And a great commercial for Macy's. I mean, all the remakes after, I'm surprised Macy's refused to use their name in the later remakes.
I'll tell you what.
Macy's and Gimbels for this version had to approve it. They did. They approved this version. 1945.
After they filmed it, though, they said they would watch it. So if they had said no, what do they have to do? Like go back and reshoot all those scenes? And that's so funny that they did that.
It's pretty funny. And the interesting thing is, when they did that remake, which I recommend no one watch, the filmmakers had approached Macy's, and the representative from Macy's said, literally, I'm quoting them, the original could not be improved upon.
100% agree with that.
No reason for us to do this.
This movie should never have been remade.
So they changed it to Kohl's, Coles, not Kohl's like the department store that's right now, but
fictional.
Yeah, fictional Kohl's department store. So,
but in my research, I was surprised how many remakes were. I mean, everybody knows the '90s version, which was, like you said, terrible, not worth even watching. But there was a TV movie in the '70s which had like all these wonderful actors of the time. A lot of radio adaptations. 20th Century Fox had like an anthology series, and one episode was a remake of this. So it was like, how many times did they remake it? I was really surprised.
Yeah, it was, and it kind of gets eclipsed by a lot of other films. Everybody talks about It's a Wonderful Life and A Christmas Story when you talk about holiday films. For me, and you guys can tell me as well, this always kicked off when I was younger. This always kicked off like the holiday movie season on television, because they would show this on Thanksgiving, because the Thanksgiving Day Parade kind of starts. The film starts with the Thanksgiving Day Parade. So you would often see this on Thanksgiving Day sometimes as a kickoff, Nick. Is that accurate? Do I remember that right? I
think you're right, because it is I think of it almost like a Thanksgiving movie too, because like you say, the Macy's Parade and, but it's also the perfect time. It's like 96 minutes, 97 minutes. So on TV, it's like they didn't have to cut anything for commercials. It just fit that 2-hour block. So I remember seeing it a lot of times. I don't think I've ever seen it on the big screen. And even when I rewatched it again, it was kind of like cut in that square TV style. Like I don't know if they did like it wasn't,
that's how it was filmed. It was filmed in 4:3.
Yeah.
4:3 ratio.
Perfect for TV. You don't lose anything, on a big screen. But great
Christy,
movie.
Same thing around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, this film makes me think of Thanksgiving. It started getting watched on Thanksgiving, and I think why it would get so many views is because we'd watch it on Thanksgiving, and then it'd be on again, and it's such a good movie. It doesn't matter what point the film's in, and it's just a feel good movie. So it's an easy watch, and you get a little teary eyed at certain parts. You're laughing.
You do, yeah.
It's a brilliant screenplay. absolute brilliant screenplay. Yeah. I love this movie. And that's why remakes of it bother me so much. It's like,
well, the funny thing about remaking this film is usually when older films get remade, they have to update it with like a new sensibility and cynicism. This movie had a ton of cynicism baked into it already. Like especially for a movie from the 40s, especially for a holiday film, this had a lot of commentary about commercialism, about the spirit of Christmas, how people just don't really, they're rushing around. So I've always thought of this film as a little subversive in its approach to things, how they really tackled that whole, buying stuff and the mad crowds and people trying to get things. And that's all they care about. And where's the spirit of Christmas? I really thought it was, very interesting that a film from the 40s was kind of tackling that already, or that was already on the radar.
Yeah, this film probably ahead of its time, dealing with these issues, surrounding it with Christmas, which is pretty genius, just like the commercialism and bringing that to the forefront. Divorced woman with a child, 1947. Yeah. Huge. And that was a problem. Yep. The studio had a little bit of a problem with it, but, obviously they got past it. And just the whole, it's the cleverness of the writing. It's witty. It's, you can't remake it, Dean. You're right. It's because you're not going to. There's no way to add anything new to it, because in 1947 they just added everything that could have been there.
Yeah, and like you said, it's the perfect script. I mean, it's just all the lines are great. They're delivered by great performances, and there is that cynicism. Like you go into it from the beginning. You see this man walking down the street in silhouette, and then from the very beginning, you see, here's the person that thinks he's Santa Claus, right? And you get that. But, throughout, all these other characters are like, you're not. It's ridiculous. It's like somebody says they're Santa Claus, they're not, And even when you see the little card where it has his address, you see he's living in Long Island. It's a Long Island address.
But his
why wouldn't he put...
His next of kin.
It's the reindeer, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, why wouldn't he put North Pole or something? So this is an old man that's living...
I think former adjutant.
Right, but his address is this like old person's home in Long Island. So you're like, that always was like sticking with me. Even as a kid, I'm like, maybe he's not Santa Claus. Maybe he is crazy, And even the lawyer and all these people who are defending him, they want to believe, but they know it's like, So at the end, when he sees the cane, right, he's like, maybe I'm not so brilliant after all. Maybe he really is Santa Claus,
But isn't that the beauty? Yeah, that's the whole beauty of the whole film, and that's why it's a miracle on 34th Street, is because, and they do this in Elf as well, where it's just
great movie. That's another.
I love Elf. The miracle is just people believing, and if you believe,
making you believe,
if you believe it with all your heart, what does it matter? I mean, right? What does it matter?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I buy him as Santa 100%. I'm like, that dude, if there's ever a Santa, he's the best Santa ever. And if you read about him on set, like, everyone loved this guy.
Everybody loved him. You wonder if he started believing it, or was like, maybe. Method, like really going in there.
Well, it's funny though, because he's not afraid to, like, this Santa is not afraid to put people in their place. Also, like
the guy
even the second scene with the drunk Santa is like, you ought to be like whipped. Like, I ought to take this, like because he was,
it's embarrassment.
Get him some coffee, black with a little cream. And it's funny, when I was watching it today, like, they're like, when he agrees to be the Santa, like, and the scene kind of like the characters are in the foreground. There's two clowns like from the parade come over and start taking the clothes. They start stripping the other Santa, like right there. They start, like, the guy's taking his boots off. They start stripping him down, like right there, to get the costume off. So I was like, and then
they shot that during the real parade. They had to like rush in and kind of get all this footage while the parade was happening. Even outside the windows, there was no green screen where they were projecting the parade out of the windows. It was like it was really happening.
And it was
really good.
And I think I read somewhere
in 1946
it was a cold Thanksgiving. Like, it was cold, like day that they were filming. It was very
Yeah,
cool.
they literally had to get all that stuff done. I think Maureen O'Hara was saying it was like one take. We had to get it, and that was it because the parade is passing you by. The people are passing you by. You need to talk about a logistical nightmare. Like you're trying to film within something that you have no control over, a massive event.
Which again, in 1947, it's not like they have the budget or they're going to CGI in later, or they're going to fix it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
and post.
They got to get
this it. And that's what just even like if you look at the film on that, like on all what happened in the back level, like the background, like what a great movie! What a great movie!
It's so great.
Such a good movie.
Yeah, they're probably how are you going to get this? Well, we're going to film during the Thanksgiving Day parade. Like,
we got a 2-hour window.
It's not like Cecil B. DeMille where he's going to restage the parade and recreate it. It's like since they're having the parade,
no double takes. Yeah,
we'll just film there, and it was great because then you have the. Where Maureen O'Hara's she's got the flask of liquor from the Santa, and then she's like looking for her gloves, and she takes out the flat. So there's a lot of kind of adult themes. Like they're funny.
He gets his wife drunk on 9 martinis to try to.
I love that scene. I love that phone scene when she's like turning it over. That's so hilarious.
Hello.
Every single character has moments like that where they're in the spotlight, where they put it's beginning to end. Every little scene. Fantastic. Even the folks bringing in, there's that little guy with the small,
no performance was called in. Everybody brought their A game in that film. Even the kids, even the little kids, like the kids that when they go past the judge and they won't kiss him, and he's like, fine, not saying good night to their grandfather or getting a hug, and his wife's like,
no hug, no nothing.
So this is great.
No
hug, no anything. He's like
the little Dutch girl.
Oh my God!
Perfect performances, so tears in her eye, and then the joy. I mean,
Natalie.
Yeah, you know what? Hang on about the Dutch girl scene because Santa Claus asks her what she wants for Christmas, and she answers in Dutch. The translation is, "I don't want anything. My present is that I've been adopted." So she actually there was an actual conversation. Yeah, the present I got is being adopted, is getting a family. So just kind of sticking to the authenticity of it wasn't just gibberish. It was like, they spoke and they had a conversation. For something that could be a throwaway holiday film, they really put a lot of thought and effort into it.
I don't speak Dutch, but Edmund Gwen sold it. Like he just starts speaking it fluently, and I don't know if he did it imperfectly or with an accent or if it was spot on, but I believed it. I'm like watching it, I'm like, this guy's Santa. He knows every language.
It's one of the reasons why the screenplay works so well is because you have on this one hand, which is a big part of it, is the commercialization of Christmas, and it's and then on the other hand, you have all of these little wonderful gems to throw in that are just give you the spirit of Christmas and really just
they're like the antidote to the cynicism.
Just constantly banging you on the head, reminding you it's not about this, it's about this. And whether you celebrate Christmas or you celebrate Hanukkah, whatever the holidays you celebrate, it's not about the shopping and the madness of it all. It's about these moments, and I think they do it extraordinarily well. Like it does. A Grinch would watch this and be like, I dig Christmas. I like Christmas.
Yeah, it's almost encapsulated in the scene with Alfred and Santa and with Kris Kringle when Chris is getting dressed and he's like, "Oh, Alfred, you enjoy impersonating me, don't you?" Right? And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why?" He goes, "Because I like giving packages and I like seeing the look on the kids' faces. It gives me that Christmas feeling."
See here.
So it is that. But then you've got the Maureen O'Hara character who's very cynical and a divorcee and obviously not happy and a little bit bitter with things and she kind of imparts that to her daughter. So Natalie Wood, who's just really great in this film, she's just such
Fantastic.
a treasure. Has that cynicism also that she's smart. She's smarter than her years. She's like, "Oh yeah, you don't believe in giants. Oh, you mean a fairy tale? Like, yeah, I don't believe in that kind of stuff, Or you know, when she's talking to Santa, like, what would you like? Oh, nothing. My mother gets me everything. If it's not too, you know, if it's practical, very very like very serious and business like.
Play make believe or imaginary friend or whatever.
We get 10% off at Macy's. You know, like I got the dress at Macy's. We get 10% off.
Yeah, she's like,
you know,
a little.
It's almost like talking little adult. Yeah, it's like a little adult.
Well, did you notice? And I loved it. She gave. I forgot what part it was. It was at the beginning when he tells her he's Santa Claus. The side eye she gives him, the side eye Natalie Wood gives him is absolutely priceless. She side eyes him like. And when we're talking about Maureen O'Hara's character with her, what's interesting is in the beginning, like even like when she's playing the only thing that's childish about her is the bubble gum. Yeah, in the beginning, that's the only thing that really is childish about her.
But even that, she like the way she puts it away, the way she puts it up
but when
at
she's chewing
night,
the bubblegum, she's chewing bubblegum after she brushed her teeth. She's blowing bubbles, and then she returns to being a little adult and puts it away. But when she's playing the piano, she closes it on her, and I thought that's an interesting thing to do to a child who's playing piano, and then to watch the evolution of this relationship, even the way they soften to each other in the way how they refer to each other as the movie goes on, and when they both start believing, is really well done. It's a slow, gradual. And it's so satisfying. It's just it's
well, and that's part of
the life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the plan with John Payne's character, Fred Gailey, who's a lawyer.
Great. I love him.
takes an interest in Maureen O'Hara's character, but he does it very sneakily because he does it through spending time with the child, taking her to the zoo, and he admits as much. He goes, you know, I've heard that the best way to get to the mother is to be kind to the daughter. You know, and there's the great scene when it's Thanksgiving, and she's like, oh, you know, can Mr. Gailey come over for turkey? And he's like, no, I'll just have a sandwich or something, you know. It's like, oh, Mom, you know, and Maureen O'Hara's like, yeah, you know, he's probably got something to do. And she's like, well, it's an awful big turkey. And he's like, well, to be honest, for the child, you know, I'm really not doing anything, you know. And then she like lets it go. Like, did I ask all right?
Did I ask her all right?
Did
I ask the way you told me to?
You know, did I ask all right, Mr. Gailey? You know, so real again, it's so cute, and you know, you see these machinations, and then John Payne teams up with Santa, and kind of like, well, you live with me, and you work on her, and I'll work on her, and we'll kind of double team them, and you know, it's really kind of a fun run because you have like opposing sides. You have the two guys that are really the spirit of Christmas, and then the non-believers that they're trying to get to, you know. And Christy, you're talking about chewing bubble gum and then go to bed. John Payne brushes his teeth.
And then the cigarette.
Smoking a cigarette.
I said that.
The cigarette was still going.
When we were watching, I'm like, there's just a lot of bad oral hygiene going on here, and I don't approve of any of it. And
forget about bad oral hygiene. It was just like who he left the cigarette like still going, so he brushed his teeth, came in, finishes the cigarette, then goes to sleep.
It was a different time.
Talk about different time. Another thing that's interesting is the way they handle the relationship between Payne and O'Hara. And so they just meet, and so we know he comes over for Thanksgiving, and then we jump to he's cooking in the house, he's answering her phone, he's giving it to her. Then we get a darling here, you know, when he gets the case, and he's like, our favorite restaurant. So there's a relationship that obviously, I mean, at the end, he's going to buy a house and they're all going to live together. But there's a relationship that's
believable.
It's very believable, and they don't waste a lot of time. Like, it's kind of like what we talked about with, I don't remember, we talked about, I think with A Few Good Men and a couple of other films, where it's like, we don't need the sex, not that they would do it at 1947, but we don't need to see them in bed. We don't need to see these things. And I think that's a good way that they kept this film very tight and had it moving. But
they didn't even show a lot of that progressing. It was just the relationship was progressing. Yeah, the relationship was progressing behind the scenes, and you saw that, like, it would bob its head up during those types of scenes where, like, the domestic scenes where it's like, I'll go get the meat, you know, with the phone call.
But it's
everything moved.
It's believable.
Everything progressed the plot. Yeah. Everything moved
all
along.
Of it was
like
plausible.
You said, very tight.
All of it
very
plausible,
tight.
yeah.
But it wasn't like it just jumped and you're like, oh, they're in love already? Yeah. What happened? I don't believe that.
It was kind of gradual.
It was totally believable.
It was kind of gradual, but very plausible, and I think nicely done with all these little delicate things. And again, we're watching it in the scope of 2023. This is 1947. having a divorced mother with a child where the father's alive. She's like, I've never met my father. My parents got divorced. It's not even like he died. They could have said he died in war and she had the baby. They went with, they got divorced and he's never met this kid. In 1947, that's insane that they did that. Yeah. And I just give them so much credit, the screenwriters so much credit for taking these huge, massive leaps in 1947, commercialism, dealing with a divorced mother raising a child, being the breadwinner of her family, a businesswoman raising a child, working every day. Huge.
Professional woman.
Huge. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Macy's and Gimbels, the two titans of industry in New York, battling
Only
it out.
Only one stands today.
Barely. It's hanging on, but
it's on a thread.
I you know what I love about this film? I loved seeing like the inner workings of Macy's, like the locker, like where the people like that's a bygone era of people coming in and they had a locker at work.
They all ate lunch together.
They're in a big lunchroom. They're in a big commissary. People are going up and down on elevators and going to different departments within like the Macy building. Like I just love seeing like that kind of stuff, like that bygone era of, the head of the toy department had an office, he had a secretary, and he was, the buyer. And I just love that kind of stuff. And then you have Macy, who's kind of like, Mr. Macy wants to see you. And they come up because the Santa starts telling people to go to other places to get things, because like he said, it's not about selling something that someone doesn't want. It's making sure that that the child gets it. And that's when Thelma Ritta's like, yeah, I felt that way, but I didn't realize Macy's felt that way too,
And it turns out to be a big hit. And everybody loves it. And she goes, this is great. She goes through, and then they're like, oh, I guess it's so. And then Gimbels finds out, and then they expand it throughout the country. And then when Macy's finds out, they're like, all right, then we're going to expand around the country. Yeah. So it becomes this like domino effect.
Yeah. And then they end up coming together, like, because Kris Kringle brings them together where he makes the donation. When Macy makes the donation to get the X-ray or lung machine, and then Gimbel's like, well, buy it through me and I'll give it to you for cost, So they're always trying to like one up each other, but it's like a friendly competition, like they know they're in business against each other, but he warmed their hearts too. He kind of melted their icy hearts,
which is why
it's really a great commercial for both of them. I mean,
which is why I think they both approved it, because especially in that scene that Dean just when they're talking about the X-ray machine, and then but Gimbels tries to one up Macy's, like, well, I can get it for cost, and then they kind of laugh and they all like
laughing,
hug. It makes them both look very well. Right. It does. Yeah. It's so I think that's why I get approved. You don't leave that film saying Macy's is a jerk or Gimbels is a jerk, because
the only jerk in the movie is probably the Dr. Sawyer, or that's Sawyer. Mr. Sawyer.
Yeah, Mr. Sawyer.
And he gets fired at the end by Mr. Macy.
Yeah, Mr. Sawyer is the only character that is
not likable.
We'll say despicable for lack of a better word. Yeah, I don't know if he's despicable, but he's definitely
doesn't change. He's definitely doesn't learn anything positive from it.
Where did you get your license from? A correspondence course?
Probably.
You're 5, and by the way, you're fired. It's just and the part with Gimbel is like
twitching his eyebrow, turning.
What about
when Gimbel? Hang on, when Gimbel's like, if we don't have what they want, send them back to Macy's. Like they're just like sending people like back and forth.
They make that big book that's got all the different
turning the pages, laminated page. Oh, you can get it right here for $85.
We don't have that, but Gimbels have it. It looks like the right color.
And it's always a bargain. No matter where.
A good value.
It's always a bargain. But
a good value.
I like when Alfred and Chris are eating lunch, and when Alfred tells him, he's like, oh, no, it's really serious. He thinks this went back to when I was an infant. Yeah. I didn't. One of the best lines in the movie is like he has issues with his father. He goes, I didn't even know.
He goes, I hate my father,
and I didn't even know I did. And he goes back.
He says I
goes back. I have a lot of guilt because people. And he's like, and he said he can go back to when I was an infant, and just the look on his face where he's just like, I gotta go, Alfred. Like, I gotta go.
Oh no, he don't soak me. He don't soak me nothing for it. I just go every day after I eat lunch.
But that's what's so great.
He says I'm an interesting because he says I'm an interesting case.
He says I'm an interesting. I'm a real interesting
because Kris Kringle is bringing joy to everyone. He's making people happy, and you see the arc in these characters. Like Doris with the mom. Like, she starts off very cold, and then towards the end, she learns something. So the fact that Mr. Sawyer is just like taking somebody good like Alfred, who doesn't mean any harm to anybody, who's doing good, and making him stop, being Santa, making him, mess up his relationship with his dad, making him feel sorry for himself. That's everything that is anti the message of the movie, anti the holidays. Like Christy said, it's like all that feel good, that's the character. That's like the epitome of, the negative stuff of society. It's like, and I was thinking that with the secretary, his secretary did the little twitch of the eyebrow. So I was like, is he having an affair with her? And I realized that just by her being near him, she's feeling all like,
he's stressing her out.
He's doing that with everybody he comes in contact with, So
because
it's funny.
Great
Santa gets a little shot in on Alfred. That goes, Alfred, the only thing I think you could be guilty of is overeating.
Overeating, right? 17-year-old kid. Come on, give him a break.
Like Santa's not afraid to tell it like it is. Like, that's what I love about him is he's not just all jolly. Like he's not afraid to kind of give it a little in there,
when as we're talking about it, it almost has a feel of Star Wars, where you have good versus evil. Like you just have that. And I wonder if there was any influence to George Lucas as a child watching this movie, because you really can see where you can grab some of it and just some of
Lucas
it.
took from everything, so I would
be interested to see if this was ever just had a little bit of an influence, because
interesting. There's a new fan theory.
You could really see it.
Fan theory in the making. Fan theory in the making. Another great scene is during when they get to the court, kind of Santa kind of tanks a competency exam, because he feels like no one's kind of all the work he's trying to do and changing hearts and minds isn't working. It seems like he's failing. So he ends up getting committed.
Especially Doris. Doris that hurt him.
Doris put him
when he thought that she put him away.
Yeah. Put him in Bellevue.
He was like, "What's the point?"
Yeah,
he's like, "Does she know?" And he's like, "Of course."
But then when he found out, that's when he was like, "Okay, great, get me out of here." And it's like, "Oh, not that easy now."
Yeah, you've been committed, sir.
He McMurphy'd back up. He wanted to get out.
So they end up, and that's where John Payne actually kind of comes to the forefront and really pushes his chips in on the table, because he decides to defend Santa and prove in a court of law that he's Santa. And that's one of the pivotal scenes in the movie when he comes home to Doris, to Maureen O'Hara, and he's got the newspapers, like, see, Gailey throws bombshell, and she's got another paper, like, that he's a quack or a hack. And he's like, yeah, I quit the law firm because they said, if you pursue this, we're not going to use you. And she's like, why did you, like, you've thrown away everything, sensible. And, she starts talking about, well, it doesn't get you very far. And he says, you know what, faith is when everything tells you not to believe it. That's what having faith is. And living in your sensible world is only going to get you so far. And you'll see, those lovely little intangibles. You'll see that that's what is important. And he walks out. And that's kind of the breaking point where he kind of is put to a decision of, what kind of person am I going to be? Do I really believe in Santa Claus, or is it just me being clever and being fun to try and get this woman? It's kind of an interesting turning point there. And then her chips are pushed to the table too, of, do I really, what is it to love again? And what is it to have faith? Can I open my heart up and have faith in someone again and be vulnerable? Because that's the thing. She does not want to ever be vulnerable. She is like locked away. Everything is in its place. It's sensible, and it makes, everything fits where it should. But this guy's like a random element. He's wild. He's, free. He's got great, wild ideas about doing things.
You're right. That's such a great scene, and you unpacked a lot there, and there's so much more to unpack, because they're fighting. That was a big fight, and you could see that they had reached a point where they were going to think about talking and having a life together, right? She says, "What are the things we talked about off camera," right? So they've reached a point where they were thinking, and she's like, "You quit your job? Like, I thought we were going to do this and do that." But they had that argument, right? And you could see it, and it was all believable, like we talked about earlier. It all worked out. It wasn't like, well, where did this fight come from? And it's like, this was a feel-good movie. Now they're arguing, but it was like genuine, and it wasn't like they were throwing things at each other. It was like a real lover spat, like this argument about ideas and what's important to each other, like you said.
Yeah, because he says, well, I'll open up my own firm. And what kind of clients will you get? He goes, people that have been pushed around. And he starts
learn a lot about the characters. Yep.
He starts talking, but then he trails off and he's like, you don't believe in me.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of realizes, like, when she's giving him this third degree, he's like, you don't have faith in me.
And that's what gets him a little more upset. You see that.
That's kind of brings his determination to the forefront of this is about this is what a good person does, is sometimes they take risks, or they do things for the greater good, and not just so you can have a good career or get ahead in life,
It's
very interesting.
Going back just a little bit to their relationship, and it's completely plausible, and I love the way they do it. It is only a month. What we're talking
We've talked about some great plans.
It is only a month. And I look, I buy in. I'm in it the whole way.
She moves fast once she gives in.
They're buying a house on December 25th together, and they just had dinner for the first time a month ago. So it's a quick move,
right. But they knew each other. Like, they really set it up, because like she's letting her kid go with this person across the hall and taking them to the zoo.
But I'm saying
it makes right, but it makes me think that this has been a relationship, and there's been some flirting maybe, and it's not like they just met and suddenly they're thinking about spending their life together.
All that being said, and I love this movie, and I buy into it. I'm good with it. I'm just saying.
Point taken, right?
Maybe
unless John Payne is just that good.
John Payne he's a catch.
Well, unless he
is a catch.
Yeah, unless he is just that smooth with the smoking in bed, and he's combing his hair before he goes to bed.
He's a lawyer. He cooks.
He makes coffee.
He makes coffee. He knows how to he takes care of a child. He's
not afraid to wear an apron.
Yeah, Christmas spirit. He believes in things. He has character. Yeah. No, he's a catch. I mean, he's a catch from the get-go.
Although, when he's smoking in bed, you bring up the point when he says, the question that's been, is that really the question everybody's been thinking? Does he sleep with his beard above the blanket or below? I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
so.
He was definitely in lawyer mode. He was definitely being like a lawyer, like making a big opening statement. The question that's been in everybody's mind forever is, does he sleep with his whiskers in or out?
Yeah. And then the answer is great. Let it breathe. It's just everything, every line.
Cold air helps it, makes it grow. Cold air makes it grow.
Nick, you brought up before the last line of the film when Payne says, "Maybe I didn't do such a cane." He goes, "Maybe I didn't do such a good thing." Mm-hmm. What was your interpretation of that? Like, because you could take it a couple of ways. Like, maybe it wasn't me. Like, he was Santa, right? You could take it that way. Like, I had nothing to do with this. Like, this was always going to be the outcome because this guy is actually really Santa. Or maybe getting this guy off wasn't like a good thing. How do you like?
I took it both ways. As a kid, I always took it like, well, why is he thinking it's a bad thing? He was Santa. That was great. But then, as you rewatch it over and over again, I think the general thing is like, at first he's like, look at me, I'm such a great lawyer because I made the world believe that this, old man who's obviously not Santa is really Santa. But then I think he was like, well, maybe he really is Santa. So it wasn't all on me. It was like the fact that he was really Santa. So that's how I take it both ways. It could go both ways.
It could go both ways. It's the only, I don't know if it's the writing or the delivery of the line, but I think it's the only thing where I would criticize the film and say, I would just wish it wasn't left for interpretation. Like, because I wanted.
Well, he kind of says the line before that, Chris. He's like, I take a little old man and legally, so I think he believed in the spirit. And he believed in the right for Chris to claim that he was Santa Claus
and the law, yes,
and the law and do that, and he had the right to do that. And we'll get to the court part. And then when he sees the cane, he's like, maybe I didn't do such a good thing after all, because it's like, well, I was just looking at it as almost as like, okay, I took the case to prove this guy was, but he really is. So now what if I get other people that claim to be so-and-so, but they're really not? Like, he's going to get all these other cases maybe, but this guy actually was Santa. He's like, well, I take a little old man and legally prove that he's Santa Claus. It's like, well, he actually was. It's like, maybe that wasn't a good thing for me, because now I'm going to be getting everybody crawling out of the woodwork.
And I'm sure that's what they meant with the interpretation. I just sometimes when I'm watching it, I'm just
the delivery. The delivery is a little bit more dark, it's a little more dark than just like whimsical, like
It's the only,
so that's where, like, even as a kid I took it that way, like a little darker, and I'm like, well, why is he so upset? Like, that's still a good thing, right?
Probably the only legit criticism I would have for the film.
I like the open-endedness of it, though. I think it's leaves it to interpretation. Even at the end, you're like, it's just a cane. It doesn't necessarily have to be his cane. Like, if it had like a special handle or something, then you're like, it's definitely his. But
it was a swing. It was a house. Her bedroom was the way the cane.
I know. Nick, he was Santa. He was Santa.
How dare you not?
And keep this in mind. He gave them the directions on how to go there. Goes, take this shortcut.
He invented ways.
That's what makes it. Like, everything was a miracle. Because how did he know that she was definitely going to make them stop or make them? You know what I mean? Like, so it's like it all was perfect.
As much as he needs you to believe in him, he believes in you.
Yeah,
and that's how Santa works.
All he could do is get the house, and hope that the rest would fall into place. So, but before that, there's this big court case for the competency of Santa. Like, it's like the lunacy of Santa. Like, they had all these great headlines of that they would show, like the newspaper headline coming, Santa on trial for lunacy. And that's when you get a treasure trove of character actors. You get William Frawley, Jerome Cowan, and Gene Lockhart all piling into the end. They come piling into the end of the film, and these guys are pros. Like William Frawley as like the political fixer. It's just great. He's trying to and Gene Lockhart plays that kind of meek character perfectly. He's so great. He's got the unenviable task of trying to rule on this whole case of what, he's like, how can I see her? He's like, I'm a judge. I took an oath. How do you want me to tell people that Santa Claus is real? And the fixer's like, well, if you don't,
you're not going to win. You're not going to win.
The little kids ain't going to hang up their stockings, and the unions are going to love you. And what about the candy makers? And what about the card makers? Oh, you're going to be real popular. Like, he's looking at it from a transactional standpoint, Nick, right? Like the fixer is like, I don't care what you feel. If you don't make the right choice, we won't even be able to put you in the primary, like kind of, he's just worried about his political future. You better go look for that chicken farm.
And they're such good performers, and the script is so good that it's not just like a plot device. Well, we needed this guy to come in to move the plot along because this is why the judge wouldn't just throw it out of court. It's like it adds it, but they're such good actors that you're like, even though he doesn't have that many more lines afterwards, just the look of him sitting there, like, yeah, you're doing all right. Yeah, don't do that. Just the looks. It's just great.
He goes like this for like the back room. There's also a great camera shot when they meet for the second time, and William Frawley's like, and if you do say he's not Santa, you can plan on getting just 2 votes, yours and the DA's. And he's like, the district attorney's a Republican. But the way
that line,
he opens the door and we go into the courtroom from there. It's a great like overhead shot. Mm-hmm. Not a lot. It's kind of standard film work, but for that one. Mm-hmm. He's like, the district attorney's a Republican, and he kind of turns away from the camera as he opens the door and enters, and we see the courtroom like that. That room is right there. So great. And then Jerome Cowan, of course, another guy that's so put upon at home. Same thing. I am not persecuting him. I am prosecuting him, and it's my sworn duty is to do it. I
should have married a butcher. If I lose this case, you wish my country, whatever the line is.
A plumber. You may very well get that.
And then John Payne did something pretty sneaky. He subpoenaed the kid without his father knowing. He sent the subpoena to the kid. Can you do
that? Is that legal? There's a lot of things that seem maybe not all that legal.
He can, but then he would have had to probably recuse himself, and he didn't. But like all those loopholes still work out because then I don't care. And then like it's realistic because he could say at that point, he's like, okay, the state concedes that Santa Claus exists, but it doesn't change. He's not the Santa Claus, so it's like it all works, But a lot of people look at the legal. A lot of people have been like parsing the legality of a lot of the stuff. Like at one point when he goes, "You are Santa Claus," the state rests. So a lot of people argue, okay, if the burden of proof is on the state, if the state rests at that point, he could just say, throw it out. He hasn't proved his case. we got to, so, but there's a lot of things like that. Nobody cares because the story is so good.
Again, there is suspension of disbelief through the entire film with these little things. Like,
I mean, he even did it when the great scene when Macy is on the stand, and he's like, "Do you really believe this man is Santa Claus?" And he's like looking at the ramifications, like the ramifications of if he doesn't, and that's when John Payne is cross-examining him, and Jerome Cowan cuts it and goes, "Are you really telling me that you don't believe that you believe he's Santa Claus?" Like a prosecutor would never be able to come in and add a question onto someone. That's when he's kind of looking. He's like, "Yes."
and then when John Payne's character is out in the hallway learning about the bags, the trial's still taking place, and everybody's like, "You wouldn't have." The defense attorney's not even in the room. It's like, what are
you're gonna need a little.
They're just gonna move on with
suspension of disbelief.
Break,
but it is still such a tight play. Like even those things like that don't make you stop believing. Don't make you they don't take you out of the moment.
One of the, that's again the magical things of the movie. Like I said, the relationship is plausible, but you can look at it and be like, it's a month, but it's still plausible to us. Like because we just because it's
when the movie's good. As a viewer, you start finding reasons to support it. You're like, okay, well, they knew each other before that month, or it still works.
Yeah, I don't care that
it's not a loophole enough that's going to ruin the movie. Or
I don't care that they've only known each other a month and they're buying a house.
Exactly.
I don't care that none of that behavior would go in a court of law. I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't care.
It's a great story.
It's a great story. It's a great movie. It's amazing acting, and I love it. And they should never try to remake it again. Ever.
The scene with the son, he's like, "Oh, everybody knows you shouldn't lie, right, Daddy?" And the father's like, "Yeah," like he's boxed in. He's of course Daddy wouldn't lie. He told me there's a Santa Claus, and the look on Jerome Cowan's face, like, he's like kind of smiles, like you got like there's nothing I can say, It's like, you wouldn't lie, would you, Daddy? He's like, no.
Well, who told you that? Daddy told me that.
Daddy, and he wouldn't lie, would you, Dad?
And all the courtroom, everyone in the court's like laughing, It's
who's
just so
Santa
great.
Claus? He's right over there. It's that guy. It's all stuff that's been done again too. Like this movie's been ripped off by Oh God, by all these other movies out there, and they some of them get closer to it, but this was the one that said it all, and that's why it's such a classic today. It should have won Best Picture, in my opinion.
In hindsight, I think a lot of people at the Academy would agree with you. It definitely should have won Best Picture. And
that's why I think maybe 20th Century Fox was pushing the other movie for some reason.
And yes, it takes place between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so it's a Christmas movie, but it's so much more than a Christmas movie. It carries. It just carries a lot. It carries a lot of weight without being heavy-handed, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So
and it's relatable today. That's the thing. It's not old-timey and dated, meaning because you're dealing with divorce,
still
you're dealing
relevant,
with them addressing that people are just in Christmas just for the shopping and all that kind of stuff, and they're acknowledging it in the film and saying, well, yeah, but no, we're going to show you what it's really about, and that
it still holds up.
If you look for it, you can find those moments to celebrate that Christmas is not, like Alfred said, it's that Christmas feeling. It's not about whether Santa's real or not. It's about whether or not you have those feelings, and at the very end, when the Dr. Pierce gets the x-ray machine, he goes, the courts have said, that you're Santa Claus, but in my personal and professional opinion, I believe you're Santa Claus. Cause it was just like, it was heartfelt. So many people got resolutions at the end,
That's why, again, it's just a gratifying film. It's like having a gratifying night's sleep or a gratifying meal or you walk away and your palate is just satisfied, and that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen with a lot of films. It doesn't. It's not as common as you would think.
I've seen this so many times since I was a kid, and then I was rewatching it, and I was watching it with my kids. We streamed it, and I was like, I wonder if they're going to think it's dated. They loved it. They were laughing along with me.
What Dean just said. It's still relevant. It's
timeless.
It's timeless.
It's set in a very dated time. Like there's references that can only be 1947, but it doesn't hurt it. It's magical, and it has points that are still relevant, that still are understandable and relatable. You know,
I certainly want to live in an era where you drink martinis before dinner.
Yeah.
We always have martini before dinner. It's
I drink before dinner.
I'll make it double strength.
I don't drink after I eat. I drink before I eat. So I live in 1947.
Well, one thing, somebody should get a DeLorean, go back to the future, and tell John Payne, don't buy a house on Long Island. You'll never. It might in 1947. It might have been great, but you know what? If that house stayed in the family, people are gonna have a traffic nightmare living on Long Island. So
maybe he'll start his own law firm out there and only deal with Long Island people. Doesn't have to leave the island.
That sounds awful.
Even Chris Kringle was taking the train. He goes taking the train out to Long Island. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Oddly enough, this was one of the very first films to be colorized.
Yes.
In 1985, when they started the awful idea of colorizing films, this was one of the first that got colorized.
I was so happy that I think I streamed this on Prime. And it was black and white. I was like, please don't be color. Please don't be color. Please don't be color.
It was just, I can understand why they did it back and why it was so trending back then, right? It was Turner who was really advocating
he was behind
that, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't getting permission from the, they used stuff that had been public domain in the sense that you can't fight it anymore because it was on TV so many times. But it was a gimmick, because it was like very monochrome, like almost all. It was only like 3 or 4 colors. It seems everybody had the same shade of green. Everybody's face tone was the same. It was like
and they were all pastel colors.
Yeah. So you wonder now with technology. I wonder why they haven't played more with that. Just because there are people that just don't like to watch black and white films. Sad to say,
Well, then they should not go see
especially on TV.
At least the first
I am not one of those people. I think there's stuff that I kind of don't look at it as black and white anymore. You just kind of see it for the film it is. And then there's some films that Psycho and things like that intentionally made black and white when every other movie was in color. And you mentioned Maestro and things others. Yeah. I think it's an artistic choice and it works great.
Roma in black and white a few years ago? Roma was a foreign film.
There's a bunch.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with black. I enjoy it.
But in this case, it was so badly done. Those colorized films of the 1980s and 90s were so bad. But you wonder now with technology. Might make you see it in a new light,
Technology wasn't there yet. Let me ask you a question. This occurred to me on watching it now. When they had the beginning of the whole courtroom portion of the thing, they showed an exterior shot of like the New York courthouse. Is that the same courthouse in 12 Angry Men? Is this in the same cinematic universe? Because they at the end they leave that courthouse, right?
It's New York. I mean,
I'm
not sure if it's
courthouse.
the exact same one, but a lot. There's one in the Bronx that looks very much like that. I'm sure there's one in Manhattan. That was the style, that kind of Romanesque, Greek. Just like that. That's how they build all those.
The Bronx courthouse, also known as you can't park your car anywhere near the courthouse. Bronx courthouse.
They have a subway right there, so just take the subway.
For those who live in the area.
Nick, the perennial Bronx advocate.
You got to do it. But I mean, this is a quintessential New York movie, and that's why I love that 34th Street is on the title. So even if you take Macy's out of it, it's still very New York, and all the references and everything, the accents, like you said earlier,
signs, the old street signs.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's very when you think New York movies, this has to be on everybody's list. Because it's very shot on location. Very true to New York.
It ranked very high on some of the AFI lists for films. It was highly ranked. It definitely should have won.
I wouldn't put it in my top 10, but it's definitely one of my top movies that I love watching every single time.
Well, where does it rank in your holiday movie list?
Oh, top 5 holiday.
Oh yeah,
movies.
It's up there. It's like this. It's a Wonderful Life.
I think this one's my favorite.
I think even better than It's a Wonderful Life. A Wonderful Life tends to be a little long. It really kicks in once Clarence comes in. That's when to me. But this is like tight, like you say. You could sit and watch this, and you're like an hour and a half just went by.
It's a perfect
like beginning to end. You don't get tired of anything.
Film. Perfect.
Every scene moves the story along. Every line of dialogue
should be 97 minutes long.
I agree.
No, it's seriously, but sometimes it's
no
too
joke.
long.
No
it's
joke.
Too long.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I for me, it's I used to have like like A Christmas Story used to be my favorite, but TBS or TNT just absolutely killed it by playing it for 24 hours a day. But honestly, I got sick of it. I got sick of the film. And this was always kind of bubbling under, but this is now my favorite just because of the message, because it addresses like it addresses like the commercialism and has that cynical tone, but then says, we acknowledge that that's a part of like real life, that people in the hustle and bustle of life. But if you stop and take a moment, and think about it and try and have a little faith, it can go a long way. So I really kind of like the message. And like I said, for me, it's ageless. It just, even though it takes place back then, it's just, the themes are perennial and timeless really for me.
And I think it was Christy who said at the beginning, like there's moments where you feel like a little emotional watching it, and maybe it's me just getting older, but it still was like almost bringing a tear to my eye and making me feel it touches your heartstrings.
It does. It actually it gets to all these little quadrants of the heart, and it makes you're laughing, you're teary, it's sentimental. It's.
Do you want your mind blown? This came out in 1947. 8 years later, Natalie Wood would do Rebel Without a Cause.
Holy wow!
With James Dean.
She had a great career.
8 years. She was only 9 years old when she made this film. 8 years later, she would be in Rebel Without a Cause, a groundbreaking film.
Let's talk about her because she is, like you say, so good in this. She shows the cynicism. She shows the child, like when she's pretending to be the monkey, and everything. And then at the end, just the range where she's, disappointed. She's angry, and then she's sitting in the car and she's like, I believe it's silly, but I believe, like, there's like, and then the joy when she sees that house. I mean, just the range of emotions. I mean, she maybe should have gotten an Oscar, for this, I think.
Do you know who reminded me of her in a recent film? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the little girl in that movie.
Yes. Good comparison.
She reminded me of her a little bit.
Good comparison.
Like I thought you were going to say Logan.
Logan.
Wolverine's daughter.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got some time. We'll go around once for a quick favorite scene if you got one, Nick.
Oh man,
there's a lot to choose from.
I know. I love when they bring all the mail. I mean, it's just a great climax to the whole thing, and then there's the epilogue with them with the house. But that scene, just like it was great. But the Dutch girl scene too. I mean, the way it's played, that's like the first time when you're like, maybe he's not a crazy man. Maybe he really is Santa Claus. Because that girl, she just had this like sad look in her eye, and you're like, what kind of hard life she had. And then when she hears him talking in her language, she's just like joy, and still like kind of tears of happiness, So I love that scene. Love it.
Yeah. The mother's like, oh, she just came over. She's not going to understand a word of she's not going to understand a word you're saying. And he's like, oh, danke.
Just talking like
Santa Claus, and then they, and Natalie Wood is
and
just
you
like,
don't know, and you don't know what they're saying unless you speak Dutch, but it's believable and you understand the emotion.
What if they
everybody's
started
like, wow.
singing Danke
and Natalie Wood's jaw is like drop. She's like watching her jaw is like almost on the floor. She's like I can't, like, oh my God, like,
yeah,
he's got
need subtitles to know what they're saying. It's just like, wow, this is Santa Claus. This is great.
He's got a real beard and he can speak these different languages. She's starting to be like, well, maybe there is something to this. Maybe my mother isn't right all the time. Christy, what do you got?
Well, I agree with Nick. The last scene with the mail and just bringing it to the point where they prove that Kris Kringle, USPS, they get his mail, so they're bringing the mail here, so they're acknowledging it. Is probably one of my favorite scenes. I toss up between the scenes between Alfred and Chris, but I think a good scene is the one you talked about before, Dean, when she comes to get Doris and they're having can he come to Thanksgiving? And she's like, oh, he has something planned. Mm-hmm. And that, because you see a lot of the future of, you see a lot of the characters, right? With those three, like, she's still very serious. And you can see the playfulness in Wood's character, and you can see pain and this, you could just see like, okay, this is going to be an interesting dynamic with these three. And I do enjoy that scene. It's very playful.
Yeah, she's like, it worked. Like
it's
after,
very
like,
playful.
He's like,
Very
yeah,
much.
you know.
And you see like where Maureen Harrod she's very serious, but you can see a little bit of a breakdown, you know. So it's
Dinner's at 3.
Like she knows that they hoodwinked her, they got her fine.
Yep.
But
it's like she wanted it too. That's
she
what
did.
I took
and that's
out of
why
it too,
I kind of enjoy
they
that
kind of
scene,
played into each other.
Yeah, that she was
great.
kind of opening up a little. I would say my favorite scenes are all just the character actors. I think the populating this film and this world with these like salt of the earth New Yorkers, you know, from Jack Albertson in the mailroom to the secretary of Shellhammer, and just all these different people that kind of, they're all like their own character, and they all add like something to the tapestry of the film. It's like, you know, that's what I love about it, is it feels authentic because there's all these different side characters that, you know, Dr. Pierce, who comes in, he's like, yeah, you know, I'll grant you he's, you know, this and that. And he's kind of like a, you know, they have all these different characters plugged into different things, and they all kind of come through. They all kind of just pass through. But like Christy was saying, with the part with before the mailbags, when John Payne is introducing the evidence, he goes, I'd like to read a little stuff. And Jerome McGowan was like, yeah, you know, we all love the post office. They're efficient, smart, and you know, we complete anything to get this out. You know, anything to get this movie.
I mean, it's Christmas Eve. They're all like, we gotta go.
We'd all like to. It's Christmas Eve. We'd all like to get home to our families.
Christmas Eve. He still has to go buy the present, and I'm like, who's waiting until Christmas Eve?
That's so funny.
I gotta get that helmet.
But you're right about all the characters. Every supporting character, you just want to see more of them almost.
Yeah.
You know, like the mom at the beginning with the little boy when she's talking, she's just like, this is the darndest thing. You're sending us. But I'm like, I'm not going to do all my shopping at Macy's because, you know, that's a great gimmick, you know? So it's like.
It really is.
My feet are killing me. I've been walking all day. You know?
It really is.
Fine thing promising the kid.
Quintessential New Yorkers just all throughout the movie.
Yeah. So cynical,
Everywhere.
So angry, you know.
But it's all believable. Like all these actors are like bringing their A game. Like one of you said in the beginning, it's like they're not dialing it in. They're really
no one calls it in. They all.
This is acting like a master class. You know, the writing, the directing. It was like it was a perfect movie.
Yeah, because some movies in the 30s and 40s can be very grandiose for the sake of being like the acting.
Well, we started to move away from that, and at this point, that early 40s like acting, started to kind of peel away into stuff that
you
was
could
more
see
realistic.
where this content it could have been that way, and it wasn't.
It could have been that melodramatic style of acting you got in the.
It was like Nick said, masterclass in acting. Like there was not one bad performance, not one.
Yep, cool. I agree.
Well, that's going to do it. Check out Miracle on 34th Street if you haven't. Kind of hard to find. It's on like Apple. It's on a couple of services.
It's streaming on Prime.
Okay,
and
so
Disney Plus too.
Oh, really? That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Disney so Plus it's available. So it is. It's available.
I stand corrected.
I mean, if you don't watch it, you'll get coal.
You'll get what?
Coal.
You get a lump of coal in your stocking.
Of coal if you don't watch it.
You absolutely should. It's a great family-friendly holiday film. Like I said, even though it's from the 40s, it's timeless. And if you like great acting, that it's just a joy to watch these actors just go to work and inhabit this busy world of Macy's and New York City during the holidays when everybody's rushing around and there's so many things going on. We stop for a moment and zero in on this family. And this miracle or miraculous thing that happens to them when they encounter this little old man by accident, like I said in the open, because of a drunk Santa. This whole thing happens because of that. This whole story hinges on that one event. And I love movies that have that where there's one thing that
gotta stay warm.
Right? Love it. Even that little role, you know, just perfectly performed.
And he's like, "I'll warm you. I ought to hit." You know, he's gonna hit him with the umbrella because I'll warm you.
And then, like Nick, I think it was Nick said before, or I don't know if it was Nick or Dean, but with the coffee, he's like, "With cream."
Yeah, black with a little cream. And then he's like, "I'll just sleep here until."
And then she has the flask, and then the other person's like, "You know,
Mrs. Walker,
Miss Walker, what are you drinking in the middle of the day?"
He was like aghast, like Mrs. Walker. And she's like, "Oh yeah, whatever." It's like. So that's going to do it. Christy, thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful holiday episode.
Great movie.
Nick Leshi, City of Kick, go check out his blog. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said in the beginning, we'll drop a link in the show notes. So if you haven't clicked on that yet, go ahead and click on it and check out what he's doing. He's doing entertainment stuff, soup to nuts, whatever tickles his fancy. He kind of will write about it. So it's always very eclectic and always very interesting. So Nick,
thank you, sir.
Or I should say Saint Nick. Thank you,
Nick.
Thank you, Saint Nicholas. Thank you for Cinder Claus. Thank you so much for joining us. So that's going to do it. Eric, we miss you. We hope that you're
feel better, Eric.
Feel better, Eric.
I'm sorry. He'll be back. He'll be back in a flash. But for Christy and for Nick, this has been Dean asking you to please be kind and rewind.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.